bituminous serpent writhing in rage. Headlights scattered like baited mice.
Welcome back to Fishing Without Bait, where we're continuing our conversation with our guitar virtuoso, Tim Vitullo. I noticed that on some of the jams when you were on stage at the Moonshadow Theater, that your band followed you very nicely.
Yeah. It's our motto that we've coined this year, and I think it's a good one, and it'll stick. Is big ears, small egos. So it really is. If somebody has a good idea, make sure you're listening so that you can catch it, and then roll with it. Don't walk into the room thinking, hey, I always am going to have the best idea, or I'm the band leader, so therefore everything I say is going to be the best thing. And that's what's fun for me, is showing up. And I'm really lucky to have talented people that play with me, that come in with awesome ideas that I would never come up with.
Does everyone there on your band feel that they have a voice at the table, Tim?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, and I try to do or make an effort to collect feedback. Throughout the years, there's definitely, I brought in songs that I appreciate. The band has said, like, hey, not your best. That's not one that we think really is going to go, or that we're going to be able to help out, or things like that.
Well, one of the true means of someone who is wise is to be able to accept constructive suggestions. You could call it criticism.
Yeah.
How did you handle that early on in your career?
Early on, it was kind of nice, and this was one benefit of starting young, is that you're so young, and so many people have so much more experience. It's really easy to take their feedback, just because you're not peers at all. They've been performing for decades and have all these accolades and acclaim, and people are fans. So that was really fun and really cool that those people would take time to talk to me as a young musician. As I've gotten older, I think it takes just a level, or takes some time to maybe get some feedback, and then you step back from it, and maybe a day or two later, once it's kind of churned around in your brain a little bit, like, oh, I get it. I see what they were trying to say, or maybe it's watching the show back on video, watching what you did, and having that kind of rattling around in your brain while you're doing it.
How did it feel the first time you heard your recorded voice or your recorded guitar playing played back to you?
Guitar playing was easy, just because, like, I'm hearing it as a spectator out of the speaker. Recorded voice was very hard, just because what you hear of yourself is not what everybody else hears in your head. So that took a little bit of getting used to. And also, like, something that was really hard for me as a part of that, like, growing up with classic rock and blues records and jazz records and things like that. I mean, my favorite band is Led Zeppelin. I mean, Robert Plant is one of the greatest rock singers to ever live. I mean, no one else will have that voice. It's so unique, and all of those. And all those great singers, that was kind of the hallmark of those genres, just so virtuosic and so accomplished. It really took getting older and almost, in college, not that I got tired of it, but just had listened to those records so much, so often, I was looking for something else to listen to, something new to keep learning and keep growing. And listening to more people who didn't have those amazing voices helped me to build some confidence of, like, okay, I can do it too. If Bob Dylan can do it, I can do it too.
Yeah, Neil Young.
Yeah, and all these, I call them good bad singers. It's these people who don't have these traditionally, beautiful voices, but
However,
make
their whole package is something unique.
Yeah, and I think even, like, the timbre of it aside, the delivery is so honest and so sincere in what they're doing. I mean, you have no choice but to listen and believe it. And I know, like, with, like, harder rock music or punk music or things like that, like, that's 100%. The intention is so deliberate and sincere and honest. The timbre of it is almost.
Recently, I don't know if you went down there, but at the Carnegie Science Center here in Pittsburgh, there was a guitar exhibit.
I've been meaning to go. We've been traveling a bunch this summer, and thankfully I've had a lot of gigs, but it's on my list.
It was quite impressive. So, of those guitarists, who are some of the people that you admire?
Yeah. I mean, again, Zeppelin was so huge. I remember there was a time, like, I just studied Jimmy Page just so so deeply. There was probably a time when I was younger, you could have like blindfolded me and I could have played like Zeppelin 2, like
Yeah.
front to back. Just that's how many times I played along with those records. And I love that. And that really opened up the door, kind of going from like the harder rock, the AC/DC, the Sabbath, the Metallica, that kind of stuff, into Zeppelin, and finding out all that stuff was really blues influenced. And my favorite songs by those artists were the ones that really drew deeply from that, kind of chasing that back to guys like B.B. King and Freddie King and Albert King and into that whole world. Those records were really informative and helpful to me. And some guy, he kind of didn't come out that way, but the bridge to help kind of do that as well, or to kind of bring that into the modern world, a guy like John Mayer, who, kind of came out as pop singer-songwriter. I remember we used to make fun of him. It's like a teenage boy, you're like, pish posh, that's kind of girly. But then he kind of had his whole blues renaissance and showed his hand that, hey, that's where I came from too, and really helped forge that. So all those influences, and then that kind of, after like really going deeply into blues for a while, the phrase I used is with jazz, I wanted my blue to be a little more purple. And similarly to that, the bridge to that for me.
I like that phrase, Tim. I want my blue to be a little more purple.
A little more purple. And the doors to kind of open that up were guys like Dwayne Allman and Jerry Garcia. And that kind of opened the world for me into the heavily improvised.
Well, when you were thinking about John Mayer at first glance, that's something in my world which we would call fundamental attribution error, where we automatically attach some type of valuation or judgment onto something just on the surface. It's like you see somebody traveling down the highway at 95 miles an hour, weaving in and out of traffic.
Mm-hmm.
A person will think, well, that person must be crazy, without knowing any of the context
Yeah.
behind it. So when you think of let's say, the standard person on the street thinks of Roy Clark or Glenn Campbell, what's the first thing that comes to their mind?
I'm sure they're thinking, just great country picker.
yahoos,
Yeah.
a hee-haw, those type of things. I've watched Glenn Campbell playing a 12-string guitar along with Roy Clark. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, both amazing. What did you? His Glenn Campbell's great. His whole thing, he was part of the Wrecking Crew, like doing session work, and then they said, "Hey, yeah, Glenn, we think we can give you a career." Have you watched? There's a documentary about his battle with Alzheimer's.
No.
It was on Netflix or something, but that was what was so amazing is it was basically his farewell tour. And I remember like the year it was going on, I hadn't found country music yet, since have, and appreciate all his artistry. But I was aware that he was doing a farewell tour, and maybe they propped him up at the Grammys or something, like, oh, Glenn Campbell's here. But the documentary talks about how he's experiencing dementia.
Yeah.
And having to get up there and perform. And it's really nice. His family was his band. His kids were part of it. So they were really supportive and helping him. But, it would be so cool. There's a scene in there where he, is forgetting the words and he can't remember the words to songs that he wrote and has been playing. But then it comes to the guitar break and it's like he's, 20 something years old, and it's just, it's lodged in that part of his brain that's not affected at all.
His technical ability was awesome.
Yeah, it's so amazing, and just the to watch that, like to see the connection he had to that instrument.
When I was watching your performance at Moonshadow, I noticed on one of the songs you were more of doing the Peter Frampton wah-wah stuff.
Oh yeah. I've seen Peter Frampton live more than any other artist, completely by accident. I love Peter Frampton, so it's not to say like I didn't want to be there ever, but yeah, I think he's an amazing guitarist, and I think it's really, his story is a very interesting one, and just kind of he is an incredibly serious musician and had a great career with Humble Pie before he went solo, and then recently listened to an interview with him where he talked about the fallout after Frampton Comes Alive kind of slid back down the charts.
Yes.
And not being able to recapture that, and what that was like for him emotionally and physically. And just how it's so cool having seen him later in life and to see him really loving performing as a an elder statesman of rock and roll. To have battled and come back from that difficult situation is really inspiring.
I got a chance to see him on his farewell tour.
Cool.
Excellent.
Yeah.
His technical ability was unsurpassed.
Yeah.
But he knew that his time was limited.
Mm-hmm.
as far as his ability, his dexterity with his hands.
Yeah, because he has some sort of degenerative
Yes.
disease. Yeah, and I follow him on social media, and yeah, he's just seems like he really is. He has found a way to make joy a regular part of his life, or at least it appears that way.
So we were talking earlier, Tim, and this factor in everybody's life. When you're not as well received as you expected to be, even though you're performing your best.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, very tough. I think that's it's really hard to not get that positive feedback, or at least any kind of energy. Like those are always the hardest shows. Even if a crowd didn't like you and like we're booing, at least they're kind of engaging with you and giving you some kind of energy, or they're heckling you or what have you. You're at least like they're the neurons are firing. The hardest ones are those silent gigs when and to no fault of anybody's, maybe they just want to sit and listen. They don't want to clap, or they don't want to cheer or sing along or anything like that. And that's really hard to put yourself out there and get no response back from anybody. It's easy to fall down that slope of what you're doing is, to me, like, is worthless or not meaningful or not important, that these people don't even deign to give it a bad response.
We speak at a lot of rehabs and different types of 12-step meetings, and one of the most disconcerting things is when the audience seems disinterested.
Mm-hmm.
You see them looking at their watch, you see them looking at the sky, and it makes you wonder, what's wrong with me?
Yeah. And it's as I've gotten older, I've learned, because we do play a lot of those gigs, or that's just how those venues operate. There's usually one or two, out there who you can tell, if you're kind of keeping your eyes up, that they're either kind of grooving a little bit in their seat, or they're cheering along, or they're clapping, or they're yelling up to the stage. And I think that's always the important thing for me to remember. Like, hey, if I showed up and there were 100 people there and 99 of them didn't really get anything, but one person did, it's like, hey, I did my job. I affected one person.
Well, that's addressing the positives in your life, and normally we have sticky minds, Tim, and the negative things seem to stick.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to be able to address the positives and make those active choices to recognize and celebrate those positives.
Yeah.
So tell us something about the positive moments in your career.
Yeah, I've been blessed. I've had so many cool moments. Yeah, and just continue to. It's been really great. I mean, just in the past couple of years, the amount of travel. I mean, the band I'm in now, my band, Tim Vitullo band. Yeah, we've had the opportunity to play in 13, 14 different states regularly. People buy our stuff and wear our shirts. It's kind of funny. If we play in a different city, I've had some friends who live there. It doesn't happen often, but every once in a while they'll be at a concert and they'll see somebody has a Tim Vitullo band shirt. It's just like, man, what a cool thing. Like, somebody thought enough of you to, they bought a shirt, and it wasn't just like hey, let me help you put money in the tank and I'm going to wax my car with it. It actually meant something to them. And just like the incredible artists I've had a chance to share a stage with and support.
Yes. So tell us about some of the folks that you've shared the stage with.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest one always, and it's always everybody wants to ask about it. Whenever I came back after college, I played in a blues band, and we got to open for B.B. King at the Benedum. And I mean, it's just a personal hero. I've listened to Live at the Regal so many times, and every time it's as captivating as the last.
Were you able to chat with him at all?
Very briefly. Unfortunately, he was not. It was his last tour, and it was time for him to probably stop doing that, just because he wasn't that everything you've heard tell of him and seen of him on stage. It was a little bit different, but still very cool all the same. And I mean, again, it's such a strange thing if you don't do it regularly, and I don't, and really haven't very much since, to walk out on a stage and it's completely dark because the lights are so bright and there's no lights out in the audience. It's just a wall of black. and then you play, and then all of a sudden, you have no idea how many people are out there, and just to like hear that roar of like 300 plus people after you just played a song, it's just like you kind of like get blown back a little bit because you had no idea what to expect, and it's
For people who've never performed on a stage and in that experience, what is it like, Tim? You were talking about seeing into the blackness. Most people would probably think that they could see the audience members.
yeah, it's and that's such a surreal thing. We talk about practice again. That's every stage is so different, and that's really like getting better, or like we'd say like be a pro. Is kind of the thing is just being prepared so that no matter what gets thrown at you, you're able to get up and do what you do best. And
So
show
how did you
people.
develop your stage presence?
Slowly, and I'm still developing it.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I think it's always been when I was younger, definitely emulation for sure. Like my favorite guitar players, I wanted to hold my guitar, at the height they did, and things like that. And as I've gotten older and dare say wiser, kind of try different things or expose to different things and find that they work better for me or make me more comfortable, or I'm able to do different things that I think are better. So I'm able to say, well, just because my favorite guitar player does that doesn't mean I have to. I think that the thing that I really like and the songwriters that influence me, they're very honest and very not plain, but it's, hey, I want to let the music speak for itself. So it's less of a character. I'm definitely a little more not manic but like vivacious. Like there's more energy that I'm trying to put out there whenever we do it. So it's not a calm conversation like this.
I'm unsure as to whether confidence precedes presence or presence precedes confidence.
I think it's cyclical. It's a feedback cycle. It's you try something new because you feel confident enough to put that out there, and if you get that feedback from it, and you're able to capture people, and it stokes that. Similarly, you feel confident to do something, and it doesn't work.
Well,
kind of build
developing presence and confidence is applicable in most every aspect of life, Tim.
Yeah.
Whether you're doing what people do, whether you're a cashier, or whether you're a CEO of a Fortune 500 company.
Absolutely. And that's something as I've gotten older, like I think people would be surprised to find like only recently am I getting comfortable as a public speaker, to like stand in front of people and present something and do that, because I think the natural assumption would be, well, you're on stage all the time. Why wouldn't you be? It's the same, and it's very different. Just, yeah, I have confidence to play guitar, but not confidence to do that. And I think, again, just getting older and doing it and trying to find out how can I share those skills and, come up with an approach to carry myself in front of other people.
We'll be back next week with our continuing conversations with our intriguing guest, Tim Vitullo. And at the end of every podcast, we offer a free prescription, fruits, nuts, and vegetables, and unplug your TV, and take up fishing. And for a truly mindful experience, we suggest that you fish without bait. Do a kindness for yourself and do a kindness for another. Forgive yourself and forgive another. Make beautiful choices and invite joy into your life. Until all are free, none are free. Namaste.
Please check out our website at fishingwithoutbait.com, where you can listen to the show, comment on our discussions, and find out where you can subscribe to our podcast. If you're interested in flying the colors of Fishing Without Bait, click the shop icon on our website. We have clothing, mugs, cell phone cases, and so much more. Show the world that you fish without bait. This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com.